At 68, I found myself sleeping on a cot in my daughter's garage in the middle of winter. Not because I was broke, not because I had nowhere else to go, but because my son-in-law Drew thought it was appropriate for someone my age. What he didn't know was that the beautiful two-story colonial they lived in, the home they were so proud of, was still in my name. I'd never transferred the deed. Not because I was scheming or manipulative. I just never got around to it after my husband died. And as I lay there that night, listening to the garage door groan in the wind, feeling the chill seep into my bones, I realized sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply reveal what you've known all along. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Margaret. Wilson Maggie to my friends. For 43 years, I was happily married to Robert Wilson, the love of my life, and father to our only daughter, Claire. We weren't wealthy by any stretch, but Robert had a good job as an engineer, and I worked as a librarian at the local high school. We saved, we planned, we built a good life. When Claire was born, we bought a beautiful colonial-style house in a nice neighborhood in Winchester, Massachusetts. It was our dream home. Hardwood floors, a wraparound porch, and enough space for Claire to grow up happy. Robert and I had always planned to travel during our retirement, see the Grand Canyon, visit the Florida Keys, maybe even take a cruise to Alaska. We'd put money aside, made all the right choices, set ourselves up for a comfortable future together. But life rarely follows your carefully laid plans. 3 years ago, just after our 43rd anniversary, Robert suffered a massive heart attack while working in our garden. He was gone before the ambulance even arrived. I was devastated. The man I'd built my entire adult life around, my rock, my companion, just gone. The grief was overwhelming, like drowning on dry land. Claire was wonderful during those first few months. She came over regularly, helped me sort through Robert's things, made sure I was eating. She'd bring her husband Drew along sometimes. I'd never been particularly close with Drew. He always seemed slightly uncomfortable around me, too busy with his phone or talking about his job and finance. But he was Claire's choice, and that was good enough for me. 6 months after Robert's funeral, I was sitting at my kitchen table paying bills when I realized something. Our house was too big for just me. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a finished basement, all for one person. Every empty room felt like a museum to a life that no longer existed. Each night, I'd walk through the house turning off lights in rooms I hadn't used. The silence was deafening. I started thinking about downsizing. Maybe a small condo near the library where I still volunteered 3 days a week. Something more manageable with no yard to maintain or stairs to climb. I mentioned this to Claire during one of her visits. "Mom, are you sure that's what you want? This is your home. You and Dad built this life together." "That's just it, honey. Your father and I built this life, and now he's gone, and this house. It's just too much." I gestured to the living room, where most of the furniture was still arranged exactly as Robert had liked it. "Besides, I've been thinking about those travel plans your father and I made. Maybe it's time I started checking some destinations off our list." Claire looked surprised. "Travel? By yourself? Why not? I'm 68, not 88. I'm still healthy. Your father would have wanted me to see those places we dreamed about." I could see the concern in Claire's eyes. She'd always been protective, even as a child. When she was 6, she once stood in front of me at the grocery store when a man started, arguing with the cashier, her little arms spread wide, announcing, "Nobody can be mean to my mommy." Drew, who had been half listening while scrolling through his phone, suddenly looked up. "Actually, Maggie, that might not be a bad idea. This house must be worth, what, $650,000 in today's market? You could buy a nice condo for half that and still have plenty left for traveling." Claire shot him a look, but he continued, warming to the idea. In fact, if you're serious about selling, we should talk about whether you might want to avoid the hassle of listing it. Claire and I have been thinking about upgrading from our place. This was the first I'd heard of this. Claire and Drew lived in a perfectly nice 3-bedroom house across town that they'd bought 5 years ago. We have? Claire asked, looking genuinely surprised. Well, I've been crunching the numbers, Drew said, not meeting her eyes. With the baby coming, we'll need more space eventually. Now it was my turn to be surprised. Baby? What baby? Claire's face softened as she reached for my hand. We were going to tell you this weekend, Mom. I'm pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother. For a moment, all thoughts of downsizing and travel vanished. My daughter was having a baby. Robert's grandchild. A new chapter for our family. That's wonderful news, sweetheart, I said, tears welling in my eyes. Your father would have been so proud. Drew cleared his throat. So, about the house situation. Drew, not now, Claire interrupted. We just told Mom about the baby. I'm just saying it's perfect timing, he insisted. Your mom wants to downsize. We need more space. It's a win-win. Something about his tone bothered me, the way he was already counting my house as their own. But I brushed it aside. This was a happy moment, and I didn't want to spoil it with misgivings about my son-in-law. Let me think about it, I said diplomatically. I'm not sure I'm ready to let go of this place just yet. There are a lot of memories here. Drew nodded, but I could see the calculations already running behind his eyes. Over the next few weeks, I found myself truly considering the idea. Maybe it would be good to keep the house in the family. Claire had grown up here, climbed those oak trees in the backyard, learned to ride her bike on this very street. And now, with a grandchild on the way. One evening, I was sorting through some of Robert's papers in his office, something I'd been putting off for months, when I found our deed to the house. I realized I'd never updated it after Robert's death. Legally, the house was still in both our names. I made a mental note to speak with our lawyer about transferring it solely to my name, but then got distracted by finding one of Robert's old journals and spent the rest of the evening reading his thoughts from decades past. The next day, Claire called. Mom, Drew and I would like to come over for dinner tonight. There's something we want to discuss with you. I had a feeling I knew what it was about. I made Robert's famous pot roast, Claire's favorite, and set the table for 3. They arrived. Promptly at 6, Drew carrying a bottle of wine that I knew was more expensive than what I usually drank. Claire hugged me tightly while Drew poured the wine, notably filling my glass only halfway. You shouldn't drink too much at your age, Maggie, he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Blood pressure and all that. I had perfect blood pressure, as my doctor had confirmed just last month, but I let it slide. After dinner, as I served coffee and the apple pie I'd baked that afternoon, Drew finally brought up the reason for their visit. Maggie, we've been thinking about what you said about downsizing, and we'd like to make you an offer on the house. Claire looked slightly uncomfortable but nodded in agreement. We're prepared to pay you $450,000, Drew continued. It's below market value, of course, but we'd be saving you the hassle of listing it, dealing with strangers walking through your home, all the paperwork. Plus, the house needs updating. The kitchen is straight out of the 90s, and the bathrooms could use a complete overhaul. I nearly choked on my coffee. The house was worth at least $650,000, as Drew himself had noted earlier. And while the kitchen wasn't ultra-modern, everything was in perfect working order. Robert had always been meticulous about maintenance. That's quite a discount you're asking for, I said carefully, not wanting to upset Claire. Think of it as a gift to your grandchild, Drew said smoothly. The money you'd be leaving on the table is an investment in your family's future. I looked at Claire, who was staring at her plate. This didn't seem like her idea. I'll need to think about it, I said finally. This is a big decision. Drew's smile tightened. Of course. But don't take too long. The baby will be here before. We know it, and we'd need time to make renovations before moving in. As they were leaving, Claire hung back for a moment. Mom, I'm sorry if Drew came on too strong. You know how he can be with financial matters. But we would love to raise the baby in this house. I hugged her. I know, sweetheart. Let me sleep on it. But I didn't sleep much that night. Something felt off. I couldn't shake the feeling that Drew wasn't being completely honest with me. And I wondered how much of this was really Claire's idea. The next morning, I called my friend Judith, who'd been a real estate agent for 30 years before retiring. Maggie, that's highway robbery, she said bluntly when I told her about Drew's offer. In this market, your house could easily fetch $675,000, maybe more with multiple offers. And what's this nonsense about the kitchen needing updating? You and Robert renovated it just, 8 years ago? 7, I corrected. Robert insisted on those granite countertops. Exactly. Drew's trying to pull a fast one on you. Don't sign anything. In fact, let me come over and we'll look at comparable sales in your neighborhood. By the end of our meeting, I was certain. Drew wasn't trying to do me a favor. He was trying to take advantage of me, his wife's mother and his unborn child's grandmother. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The next morning, I called Claire. Sweetheart, I've been thinking about Drew's offer and I'd like to meet with both of you to discuss it further. That's great, Mom. Drew will be so pleased. How about dinner at our place tomorrow night? I agreed, but I had no intention of accepting their lowball offer. What I wanted was to understand why Drew thought he could take advantage of me this way, and whether my daughter was fully on board with his scheme. When I arrived at their house the following evening, I noticed Drew's new BMW in the driveway, purchased just 3 months ago, according to Claire. For someone concerned about needing more space for a baby, he certainly had no problem spending money on luxury items for himself. Claire greeted me with a warm hug, her small baby bump now visible under her flowing top. Drew offered a perfunctory kiss on the cheek before ushering me into their dining room, where the table was already set with their wedding china. We're celebrating tonight, Drew announced, popping open a bottle of champagne. Claire and I are absolutely thrilled that you're considering our offer. I'm considering it, I emphasized, accepting a glass of water instead of champagne. But I've been doing some research. The market value of my house is significantly higher than what you've offered. Drew's smile faltered slightly. Well, as I mentioned, there are the renovations to consider, plus we're saving you all the hassle of listing. I spoke with Judith Brady, I interrupted. You remember her, Claire? She was a real estate agent for 30 years. She thinks the house could sell for at least $675,000 in this market. Claire looked surprised. Really? That much? Drew's expression darkened. With all due respect, Maggie, your friend is probably behind the times. The market is shifting, and older homes like yours aren't commanding those prices anymore. That's strange, I replied calmly, pulling out my phone. Because just last month, the Peterson house down the street, smaller than mine and definitely in need of updates, sold for $640,000 after only 5 days on the market. Claire turned to Drew. Is that true? Drew's jaw tightened. Real estate is complex, Claire. There are factors Maggie doesn't understand. I understand enough to know when I'm being lowballed, I said firmly. If you want to buy my house, you'll need to make a fair offer. The tension in the room was palpable. Drew set down his champagne glass with more force than necessary. Look, Maggie, we're family. We thought we were doing you a favor by taking this off your hands. If you want to go through the stress of listing it, dealing with inspections, negotiating with strangers, at your age, then be my guest. At my age? I repeated, feeling heat rise to my face. I'm perfectly capable of selling my house, Drew. I managed our family finances for decades while Robert was alive. Claire placed a hand on Drew's arm. Mom's right. If the house is worth more, we should pay what it's worth. Drew pulled away from her touch. We can't afford $675,000, Claire. You know that. Then perhaps you shouldn't be buying a house right now, I suggested. There's nothing wrong with the home you have. Nothing wrong? Drew scoffed. It's half the size of yours. The backyard is tiny and the school district isn't nearly as good. You weren't concerned about the school district when you bought it 5 years ago, I pointed out. That was before we were having a child, Drew snapped. Claire looked increasingly uncomfortable. Let's all just calm down. Mom, we really would love to raise our baby in your house. It means so much to me. Could we maybe meet somewhere in the middle on the price? I softened at my daughter's earnest expression. Of course we can discuss it, honey. But I won't be taken advantage of. Your father worked too hard for that house. Drew pushed back from the table. I need some air. He left the room, leaving Claire and me alone. After a moment of awkward silence, Claire sighed. I'm sorry, Mom. Drew's been under a lot of pressure at work lately. His firm is going through layoffs and he's worried. This was news to me. Is his job at risk? He says no, but I can tell he's concerned. And with the baby coming? She trailed off, her hand resting on her stomach. Why didn't you tell me? I asked gently. Drew doesn't like discussing it. He says it makes him look weak. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Claire, is buying my house really what you want? Or is this Drew's idea? She hesitated. I love that house, Mom. I have so many wonderful memories there. And yes, the idea of raising my child where I grew up is special to me. She paused. But the offer wasn't my idea. Drew came up with the number. I thought as much. Drew returned to the room, his composure restored, but tension still evident in his posture. Claire, your mother clearly isn't ready to sell. Let's drop it for now. I stood up. Actually, I am ready to sell, just not at a discount to someone who's trying to take advantage of me. Drew's face flushed. Take advantage? We're offering you a clean, easy transaction and the knowledge that your home will stay in the family. That's worth something, Maggie. Not $225,000, I replied evenly. The dinner deteriorated from there. Drew barely spoke. Claire tried desperately to smooth things over, and I left with a heavy heart, wondering if I'd damaged my relationship with my daughter by standing my ground. The next week was tense. Claire called daily, but our conversations were strained. Drew didn't speak to me at all. Then, on Friday afternoon, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Mrs. Wilson, this is Dr. Layton from Winchester Memorial Hospital. Your daughter Claire has been admitted with some pregnancy complications. My heart dropped. Is she all right? Is the baby? Both are stable, the doctor assured me. But she's been placed on bed rest for at least the next week, possibly longer. She asked me to call you. I rushed to the hospital, fear gripping my chest. When I reached Claire's room, Drew was already there, pacing nervously. What happened? I demanded. Her blood pressure spiked, Drew explained, his earlier hostility temporarily forgotten. They're worried about preeclampsia. Claire looked pale, against the hospital sheets, but managed a small smile when she saw me. Mom, I'm okay, really. Just need to rest. I sat by her bedside for hours, holding her hand while Drew made calls and spoke with doctors. When visiting hours ended, I reluctantly prepared to leave. You'll come back tomorrow? Claire asked, squeezing my hand. Wild horses couldn't keep me away, I promised. In the hospital parking lot, Drew caught up with me. Maggie, wait. I turned, expecting more tension, but he looked genuinely concerned. The doctor says Claire needs complete rest. No stress. No housework. Nothing. For at least 2 weeks, maybe longer. Of course, whatever she needs. Our house is 2 stories. The bedroom, the kitchen, she'll be going up and down stairs constantly. I saw where this was heading. You want her to stay with me while she recovers. It makes sense. Your house is all on one level, except for the guest rooms upstairs. She can rest in the main bedroom. Everything she needs will be accessible, and you'll be there to help. It did make sense. And more importantly, it was what Claire needed. Of course she can stay with me, I agreed. You too, if you'd like. Drew hesitated. I have a major project at work. Late nights. It might be better if I stay at our place and visit when I can. I nodded, not entirely convinced by his excuse, but too worried about Claire to press the issue. The next day, Drew brought Claire to my house with a small suitcase of her things. I had already prepared the main bedroom, mine, changing the sheets, clearing space in the closet, making it as comfortable as possible. Mom, I can't take your room, Claire protested weakly as Drew helped her into bed. Nonsense. It's the largest. It has the attached bathroom, and the TV is already set up just how you like it. I'll be fine in the guest room. Drew stayed for dinner, then left with a promise to call Claire in the morning. Once he was gone, my daughter's composure crumbled. I'm scared, Mom, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. What if something happens to the baby? I held her close, just as I had when she was a little girl frightened by thunderstorms. Nothing's going to happen. You're both going to be fine. I'll make sure of it. For the next week, I cared for Claire as only a mother can. I cooked her favorite meals, helped her shower, read to her, and kept her company during the long hours of mandated rest. Drew visited briefly each evening, always with the same excuse about work keeping him busy. On the 8th day, Claire received a call from her doctor with good news. Her blood pressure had stabilized, and while she still needed to take it easy, strict bed rest was no longer necessary. We celebrated with hot fudge sundaes, her pregnancy craving, and for the first time in days, I saw genuine relief on my daughter's face. That evening, Drew arrived earlier than usual, carrying a bouquet of flowers for Claire and, surprisingly, one for me as well. A thank you, he said, handing me the yellow roses. For taking care of her. Later, after Claire had fallen asleep, Drew asked me to join him in the kitchen. Maggie, I've been thinking about our discussion regarding the house. He began, his tone conciliatory. You were right. Our offer wasn't fair. I regarded him cautiously. I appreciate you acknowledging that. Since Claire's been here, I've realized how perfect this house would be for us. One level, the beautiful garden, the neighborhood. It's ideal. He took a deep breath. I'd like to make a new offer. $550,000. Still well below market value, but a significant improvement. I considered it briefly before shaking my head. Drew, I'm willing to sell to you and Claire, but only at a fair price. $650,000 is already a family discount. His friendly demeanor evaporated. That's ridiculous. You're being greedy, Maggie. After everything we've been through with Claire's health scare, you're still trying to squeeze every penny out of us? I was taken aback by his sudden shift. This isn't about greed. It's about fairness. Fairness, he spat. Is it fair that Claire has to worry about money while carrying your grandchild? Is it fair that you're sitting on this massive house all by yourself while we're cramped in our starter home? Lower your voice, I warned, glancing toward the bedroom where Claire was sleeping. You'll wake her. Drew leaned across the counter, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You know what I think? I think you're enjoying this. Playing the victim, making me the bad guy. But we both know you're just a lonely old woman who can't let go of the past. His words stung, but I refused to show it. I think you should leave now, Drew. Come back when you can be civil. This is between you and me, Maggie. Don't involve Claire. She doesn't need the stress. With that final warning, he grabbed his keys and left, the front door closing with a decisive click behind him. I sat alone in my kitchen, shaken by the encounter. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about power, control, and a man who was used to getting his way. For the first time, I wondered if there was more to Drew's financial concerns than he was letting on. The next morning, I made a decision. I called my lawyer. My lawyer, Patricia Morales, had been handling my family's legal matters for over 20 years. She'd helped Robert and me draft our wills, assisted with Claire's college financial aid applications, and guided me through the paperwork jungle after Robert's death. If anyone could help me navigate this situation with Drew, it was Patricia. "So, you never updated the deed after Robert passed?" she asked, reviewing the documents spread across her desk. "No," I admitted. "It was on my to-do list, but there were so many other things to handle. Insurance claims, bank accounts, his pension." Patricia nodded understandingly. "It happens more often than you'd think. Technically, the house is still in both your names, which means you're the sole owner now that Robert is deceased. But we should update the records to reflect that." I hesitated. "Before we do that, I need your advice on something else." I explained the situation with Drew and Claire, his lowball offer, his increasing hostility, and my concerns about what might be happening with his finances. Patricia listened without interruption, then leaned back in her chair. "Maggie, I'm going to be blunt. This sounds like financial manipulation, possibly even elder abuse. Drew is trying to pressure you into selling a valuable asset at well below market value, using your relationship with your daughter as leverage. Hurry." Words hit me like a physical blow. "Elder abuse? That seems extreme." "It starts small," Patricia said grimly. "First, they question your financial decisions. Then they suggest you're not thinking clearly. Eventually, they take control for your own good. I've seen it too many times." "Drew hasn't gone that far," I protested. "Not yet," Patricia agreed. "But his behavior is concerning. The price manipulation, the sudden interest in your house, the emotional pressure, these are red flags." "What should I do? I don't want to hurt Claire, especially not now with the baby." Patricia tapped her pen thoughtfully against her desk. "Let me ask you something. Have you considered not selling at all?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "You originally thought about downsizing because the house felt too empty, too full of memories. But now Claire is staying with you, and soon there will be a grandchild. Perhaps the house won't feel so empty anymore." I hadn't considered that perspective. The past 2 weeks with Claire had brought life back into the house. The quiet rooms that once echoed with absence now rang with conversation and laughter. "That's something to think about," I admitted. "In the meantime," Patricia continued, "let's hold off on updating the deed. It might be useful to have that card in your pocket, so to speak." I left Patricia's office with a plan, or at least, the beginnings of one. I needed more information about Drew's financial situation, and I needed to have an honest conversation with Claire about the future. When I arrived home, I found Claire in the living room, folding baby clothes she'd ordered online. She looked up with a smile that quickly faded when she saw my expression. "Mom, is everything okay?" I sat beside her on the sofa. "I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Claire set aside the tiny onesie she'd been folding. "Of course. Are you and Drew having financial problems?" Her eyes widened slightly, then dropped to her hands. "Why would you ask that?" "Because his behavior doesn't make sense otherwise. The lowball offer on the house, his reaction when I refused, his comment about your starter home. Something doesn't add up." Claire was silent for a long moment, then sighed heavily. "Drew didn't want me to tell anyone. He says it's temporary, that he'll fix it." My heart sank. "What happened?" "About 8 months ago, Drew invested a significant amount of our savings in a cryptocurrency venture. One of his colleagues at the firm tipped him off, said it was a sure thing." She twisted her wedding ring nervously. "It wasn't. The company turned out to be fraudulent, and Drew lost everything we had put aside. Our emergency fund, the money, for the baby, all of it. "Oh, Claire," I breathed. "Why didn't you tell me?" Drew was so ashamed. He's been working overtime, taking on extra projects, trying to rebuild our finances before the baby comes. Her eyes filled with tears. "That's why he was so insistent about buying your house. He saw it as our only chance to get back on our feet. If we could buy it below market value, we could eventually sell it for a profit or take out a home equity loan to cover our debts." The pieces finally clicked into place. Drew's desperation, his anger, his insistence that I was being selfish, it all stemmed from the financial hole he'd dug himself into. "Does he have other debts?" I asked gently. Claire nodded miserably. "Credit cards, a personal loan he took out, trying to recoup the losses. He's been juggling payments, but it's getting harder. And now, with me on reduced hours at work due to the pregnancy complications..." I took my daughter's hands in mine. "Claire, I want to help you. But not like this. Not by letting Drew pressure me into selling my home at a loss so he can use it to fix his financial mistakes." "I understand," she whispered. "I never wanted to put you in this position. We'll figure something out," I promised. "But first, I need you to be completely honest with me about everything. No more secrets." Over the next hour, Claire revealed the full extent of their financial troubles. Drew had lost not just their savings but had taken out significant loans against their house. They were 3 months behind on their mortgage. The new BMW in the driveway? Leased, with payments they could barely afford. Drew had been hiding bills, intercepting collection notices, and lying to Claire about how bad things really were. By the time she finished, I was stunned. My son-in-law had created a financial disaster and was now trying to use my house, my home of 40 years, as his bailout plan. "What are you going to do?" Claire asked, wiping away tears. "I'm not sure yet," I answered honestly. "But we'll face this together." That evening, Drew arrived with takeout dinner and a cautious smile. He seemed surprised to find Claire and me sitting together in serious conversation. "Everything okay?" he asked, setting down the paper bags. "Claire told me everything," I said, plainly. "About the cryptocurrency investment, the debts, all of it." Drew's face drained of color. He shot an accusatory glance at Claire. "We agreed to keep that private." "She's my mother, Drew. I can't keep lying to her." Drew sank into a chair, his facade of confidence crumbling. "So now what? You're going to lecture me about responsibility? Tell me what a failure I am?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm going to propose a solution." Both Drew and Claire looked at me with surprise. "Claire and the baby will stay here with me. This house is too big for just me, and having family around would be a blessing. You're welcome to stay as well, Drew, but there will be conditions." His eyes narrowed. "What kind of conditions?" "Complete. Financial transparency. No more secrets, no more hidden debts. You'll work with a financial advisor of my choosing to create a debt repayment plan, and you'll contribute to household expenses based on what you can realistically afford." "And in return?" Drew asked suspiciously. "In return, you'll have a safe, stable home for your family while you get back on your feet." Drew's expression darkened. "So I'm supposed to live under your roof, follow your rules, let you dictate my finances? I'd rather..." "This isn't about your pride, Drew," I interrupted firmly. "This is about what's best for Claire and the baby. Your financial decisions have put them at risk. Now you have a chance to make things right." Claire reached for Drew's hand. "Please, Drew. Mom is offering us a lifeline. We need this." I could see the conflict playing across his face, humiliation battling with pragmatism. Finally, he nodded, stiffly. "Fine, but it's temporary, just until we're back on our feet." "Of course," I agreed. For the next 2 weeks, things proceeded cautiously. Drew moved in, bringing only essential belongings from their house, which was now in pre-foreclosure. He met with the financial advisor I'd recommended, who painted a sobering picture of their situation. It would take at least 2 years of aggressive debt repayment to clear what they owed, assuming Drew kept his job and received his expected bonuses. Claire continued to improve, her blood pressure stabilizing as the stress of their financial situation eased. She began nesting in earnest, converting one of the upstairs bedrooms into a nursery using furniture and baby items friends had passed down. I thought we had turned a corner, that Drew had accepted our arrangement and was committed to making it work. I was wrong. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. I had been volunteering at the library all day and returned home to find Drew and a woman I didn't recognize sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by papers. "Mrs. Wilson," the woman greeted me, standing to offer her hand. "I'm Vanessa Cortez from Pinnacle Realty. Drew told me you're interested in selling your home." I stared at Drew, who met my gaze defiantly. "What is this?" "We need to be realistic, Maggie," he said. "This arrangement isn't working. Vanessa thinks we can get top dollar for this place if we list it now." "Get out," I said to the realtor, my voice surprisingly steady despite the anger coursing through me. "Drew and I need to have a private conversation." The woman glanced between us, sensing the tension. "Perhaps I should come back another time." "There won't be another time," I assured her. "This house is not for sale." After she left, I turned to Drew. "How dare you bring a realtor into my home without my permission?" "Our home," he corrected. "Since we're all living here now." "My home," I emphasized. "I welcomed you and Claire because you're family and you needed help. That doesn't give you the right to make decisions about my property." Drew scoffed. "Your property. That's all you care about, isn't it? Not Claire, not your grandchild, just your precious house and your money." "Where is Claire?" I demanded, suddenly worried. "She's at her doctor's appointment, the one you forgot about." His accusations stung because it was true. With everything happening, I had forgotten Claire's checkup was today. "You're using that against me?" I asked incredulously. "I'm pointing out that you're not as reliable as you think you are, Maggie. Claire needs stability, security, not an aging mother who can't keep track of important dates." Something inside me snapped. All the patience, all the understanding I'd been trying to maintain for Claire's sake, it evaporated in an instant. "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Excuse me?" "Get out of my house. Now. Pack what you need and leave." Drew laughed. "You can't kick me out. Claire needs me. Where do you expect me to go?" "That's not my concern. What is my concern is having a manipulative, deceitful person under my roof. You went behind my back, Drew. Again. After everything I've done to help, you both." "This is what's best for all of us," he insisted. "We sell, split the proceeds, everyone wins." "The only person who wins is you," I countered. "You get bailed out of your financial mess without facing any consequences." "Well, not anymore. I want you gone by the time Claire gets home." Drew's expression hardened. "Make me." And in that moment, I made my decision, a decision that would change everything. I didn't wait for Drew to respond. Instead, I walked straight to my office, pulled out the folder containing all my important documents, and found the original deed to the house. Then I called Patricia. "I need you to come over," I said when she answered, "and bring whatever paperwork is necessary to officially transfer the house into my name alone. It's time." Patricia must have heard the resolve in my voice. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. While waiting, I wrote a letter to Claire explaining everything. Drew's behavior, my conversation with Patricia about potential elder financial abuse, and my decision to assert my ownership of the house. I knew this would hurt her, but I couldn't keep enabling Drew's manipulative behavior, even for my daughter's sake. The doorbell rang at exactly the time Patricia promised. I let her in, grateful to see her familiar, reassuring face. "Are you sure about this, Maggie?" she asked as she set her briefcase on the dining room table. "Once we file these papers, there's no going back." I'm sure, I said firmly. Drew crossed a line. He brought a realtor into my home without my permission, tried to list my house behind my back. I can't trust him anymore. Patricia nodded, her expression grim. Let's get started then. We were halfway through the paperwork when the front door opened. Claire entered looking tired but happy. Mom? Drew's car isn't in the driveway. Is he? She stopped short when she saw Patricia and the documents spread across the table. What's going on? I stood, my heart racing. Claire, sit down. There's something I need to tell you. Her eyes darted nervously between Patricia and me. You're scaring me. Drew brought a realtor here today, I said gently. He was trying to list the house for sale without my knowledge or consent. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. He wouldn't do that. He did, I insisted. Ask him yourself. He told me this arrangement isn't working, that selling the house was what's best for everyone. But we agreed. Claire sank into a chair, looking devastated. He promised me he wouldn't pressure you anymore. I placed the letter I'd written in front of her. There's more you need to know about the house, about Drew's behavior, about the concerns Patricia has regarding financial manipulation. It's all in here. Claire stared at the envelope but didn't take it. Just tell me. I took a deep breath. The house is still legally in both your father's name and mine. After he died, I never updated the deed. Patricia is here to help me transfer it solely into my name. Okay, Claire said slowly. That makes sense. But why now? Why the urgency? Because I don't trust Drew anymore, I admitted. I'm afraid if I don't secure my legal ownership immediately, he might try something else. Something else? Mom, he's not some criminal mastermind. He's just desperate and making bad decisions. Desperate people can do terrible things, Patricia interjected gently. Especially when finances are involved. Claire's eyes narrowed. So this is about protecting your assets from my husband? From your grandchild's father? It's about protecting myself, I corrected. And yes, my home. The home your father and I worked our entire lives to pay for. Before Claire could respond, the front door opened again, and Drew walked in carrying several shopping bags. He froze when he saw us all gathered around the table. What's going on? He asked, his eyes darting to the papers and then to Patricia, whom he'd never met. Where have you been? I asked coolly. Getting supplies for the baby's room, he said, holding up the bags as evidence. Claire mentioned we needed paint and curtains, so I thought I'd surprise her. He smiled at my daughter, who didn't smile back. Did you bring a realtor to the house today? Claire asked directly. Drew's smile faltered. I spoke with someone, yes, just exploring options, getting a professional opinion on what the place might be worth in today's market. Without discussing it with Mom first? Drew set down the bags, his expression hardening. I was going to talk to both of you after I had some concrete numbers. I didn't see the harm in getting information. The harm, I interjected, is that you were making decisions about my house without my involvement. Again. Drew's gaze shifted to Patricia and the papers on the table. And what's this? Some kind of ambush? This is Patricia Morales, my attorney, I said. She's helping me update the deed to my house, which is still in both my name and Robert's. Understanding dawned on Drew's face, followed quickly by calculation. So technically, the house isn't entirely yours yet? Legally, as Robert's widow, Maggie is the sole owner, Patricia stated firmly. We're simply updating the paperwork to reflect that reality. Drew turned to Claire. Did you know about this? That your mom never updated the deed after your dad died? Claire shook her head, looking increasingly uncomfortable. So who knows what else she might have forgotten to update? Insurance policies? Investments? Drew pressed, sensing an opportunity. That's enough, I said sharply. My financial affairs are none of your concern. They are when you're housing my pregnant wife, Drew shot back. Claire stood suddenly. Stop it, both of you. Her hands were shaking. I can't be in the middle of this anymore. I need some air. Before either of us could respond, she grabbed her purse and left, the door slamming behind her. Drew glared at me. See what you've done? Upsetting her in her condition? What I've done? I repeated incredulously. You're the one who's been lying. To her for months about your finances, who lost all your savings on a cryptocurrency scam? Who's been trying to manipulate me into selling my house to bail you out? Drew's face flushed with anger. You don't know what you're talking about. Claire told me everything, I said. About the lost investments, the hidden debts, the loans against your house. She knows I know. For a moment, Drew seemed genuinely caught off guard. Then his expression shifted to something colder, more calculated. You think you've got it all figured out, don't you, Maggie? The wise mother protecting her daughter from her irresponsible husband. He gave a humorless laugh. But Claire will choose me in the end. She always does. This isn't about choosing sides, I said. It's about doing what's right. What's right? Drew scoffed. What's right is taking care of your family. If you really cared about Claire and your grandchild, you'd help us without all these conditions and judgments. Patricia, who had been quietly observing our exchange, spoke up. Mr. Thompson, I'd advise you to consider your tone and words very carefully. What you're suggesting could be construed as financial coercion of an elder family member. Drew rounded on her. I don't need legal advice from someone who's not my lawyer. Perhaps you should consult your own attorney, Patricia suggested evenly. Because once these papers are filed, any attempt to claim interest in or control over Mrs. Wilson's property would be legally problematic for you. Drew's jaw tightened. So that's how it's going to be? You're choosing your house over your daughter's well-being? I'm choosing not to be manipulated, I corrected. Claire and the baby are always welcome in my home, but I won't be pressured into financial decisions that aren't in my best interest. Fine, Drew said, his voice dangerously quiet. Have it your way. He turned and walked out, following Claire. Patricia and I finished the paperwork in silence. After she left with the documents to be filed first thing in the morning, I sat alone in my living room, wondering if I'd done the right thing. Had I just damaged my relationship with Claire irreparably? Was Drew right? Would she choose him over me? Hours later, as evening turned to night with no word from Claire, I began to worry. I called her cell phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail. Just as I was considering calling hospitals, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Mom? Claire's voice sounded small, tear-stained. Claire, where are you? Are you all right? I'm at Megan's place, she said, referring to her best friend since college. I just needed some space to think. Relief washed over me. I understand. I was worried when you didn't come home. I'm not coming home tonight, she said. Drew and I need to figure some things out. My heart sank. He's there with you? No, She hesitated. Actually, I don't know where he is. He's not answering my calls. That didn't sound good. Claire, whatever you're feeling right now, please know that I love you. Everything I've done was to protect myself, yes, but also to protect you and the baby from Drew's financial chaos. I know, she whispered. I think I've always known, deep down, that there was something wrong with how he handled money. I just didn't want to see it. What will you do now? I asked. I don't know yet. Megan says I can stay here as long as I need to. She has a spare bedroom. You know you're always welcome at home, I reminded her. There was a long pause. It's not that simple anymore, Mom. I need time to sort through all of this. After we hung up, I tried to sleep, but found myself tossing and turning, my mind racing with worry about Claire, anger at Drew, and uncertainty about the future. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of someone pounding on my front door. Bleary-eyed, I peered through the peephole to find Drew standing there, his expression thunderous. "Open the door, Maggie," he demanded. "We need to talk." I hesitated, then unlatched the door but kept the security chain on. "What do you want, Drew?" "Where's Claire?" he demanded. "She's not here. She stayed at Megan's last night. She's not answering my calls." "Maybe she needs space," I suggested. Drew's eyes narrowed. "This is your fault. You turned her against me with all your talk about financial manipulation and elder abuse. You made me the villain." "You made yourself the villain, Drew." I just pointed it out. His face contorted with fury. "Let me in. I need to get my things." I considered refusing, but decided it would be better to let him collect his belongings and leave. I closed the door, removed the chain, and reopened it. Drew brushed past me without another word, heading straight for the guest room where he'd been staying. I followed at a distance, watching as he haphazardly threw clothes into a duffel bag. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Why do you care?" He snapped. "Because my daughter is carrying your child, and like it or not, we're connected by that." Drew zipped the bag with unnecessary force. "I'm staying at a buddy's place for now, until I figure out next steps." "Next steps?" He straightened, fixing me with a cold stare. "You think this is over? That you've won? All you've done is delay the inevitable, Maggie. Claire will see reason eventually. She'll understand that selling this house is the best solution for everyone." "It's the best solution for you," I corrected. "Not for me, not for Claire, and certainly not for the baby." Drew slung the bag over his shoulder. "We'll see about that." As he turned to leave, I felt a chill run down my spine. There was something in his tone, in the calculated look in his eyes, that suggested this confrontation was far from over. What I didn't realize then was just how far Drew would go to get what he wanted. For the next week, things were quiet. Too quiet. Claire remained at Megan's apartment, calling daily but maintaining her distance. Drew had seemingly disappeared, not even showing up at work according to Claire. I tried to resume my normal routines, volunteering at the library, tending to my garden, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Drew was planning something. Patricia called to confirm that the deed had been successfully transferred into my name alone. "It's official," she said. "The house is legally yours, with no ambiguity." "Thank you," I replied, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. At least that was secure. "Have you heard from Drew?" Patricia asked. "Not since he collected his things." "Claire hasn't either, which is concerning her. Keep your guard up, Maggie. Men like Drew don't usually give up so easily." Her warning proved prophetic. The very next day, I received a call from the director of the library where I volunteered. "Maggie, I hate to bother you with this," Linda began, her tone unusually hesitant. "But we've received some concerning information about you." My stomach dropped. "What kind of information?" "Someone called claiming to be a concerned family member. They said you've been having memory issues, confusion, even periods where you don't recognize familiar people." Linda paused. "They suggested you might be in the early stages of dementia." I gripped the phone tightly. "That's absolutely false." "Who made these claims?" "They wouldn't give their name, just said they were a close relative worried about your well-being. Maggie, I've known you for years. You're sharp as a tack. But as the director, I had to follow up." "I appreciate that, Linda. I can assure you I'm perfectly fine mentally. In fact, I had a complete physical just 2 months ago. My doctor found nothing concerning." "I believe you," Linda said warmly. "But perhaps it would be a good idea to bring a note from your doctor next time you come in?" "Just to put this matter to rest officially," I agreed, seething inside. This had Drew written all over it. Trying to paint me as cognitively impaired was a classic tactic. If people believed I was losing my mental faculties, they might question my financial decisions, my insistence on keeping my house, even my legal capacity to make those choices. After hanging up, I immediately called my doctor's office and scheduled an appointment for a cognitive assessment. I wanted official documentation of my mental clarity, just in case Drew tried to escalate this particular line of attack. Next, I called Patricia to update her on this development. "This is serious, Maggie," she said gravely. "He's trying to lay groundwork to challenge your competency. If he can convince enough people you're not mentally capable, he might try to have Claire appointed as your guardian, giving them control over your financial decisions." The thought chilled me to the bone. What can I do to protect myself? Document everything. Get that cognitive assessment. Keep a journal of all interactions with Drew, dates, times, what was said. And most importantly, talk to Claire. She needs to know what her husband is doing. That evening, I invited Claire over for dinner. Despite everything, she accepted. When she arrived, I was shocked by her appearance. Always slender, she now looked gaunt, with dark circles under her eyes and a pallor that concerned me. "Have you been eating properly?" I asked as I ushered her into the house. She managed a small smile. "Megan's idea of cooking is ordering takeout. I miss your food." I fixed her a plate of the roast chicken and vegetables I'd prepared, watching with satisfaction as she ate with genuine appetite. Only once she'd finished did I broach the difficult topic. "Claire, something happened today that you should know about," I began carefully. "Someone called the library where I volunteer, claiming I'm showing signs of dementia." Her fork clattered against her plate. "What? Who would do that?" "I think we both know who." Claire's face flushed with anger. "You think Drew would do something like that? That's a serious accusation, Mom." "It is," I agreed. "And I wouldn't make it lightly. But who else would benefit from making people think I'm mentally incompetent? Who else has been pushing for me to sell this house?" She fell silent, unable to argue with the logic. "Have you heard from him?" she asked finally. "Not directly." "Have you?" "He texted yesterday, said he needed space to regroup and rethink our strategy." She shook her head. "Our strategy? Like this is some kind of game or business deal." "Claire," I said gently, "I'm worried about what Drew might do next. Patricia thinks he could be trying to build a case to challenge my competency, to gain control of my finances. Through you." "I would never let that happen," she insisted. "I know you wouldn't. But Drew can be persuasive. And he's desperate." Claire stared at her empty plate. "I keep thinking about all the red flags I ignored, the secretiveness about our finances, the way he'd get defensive whenever I asked questions, how he'd make me feel stupid for not understanding his investment strategies." She looked up at me, her eyes filling with tears. "How did I not see it?" "Because you loved him," I said simply. "Love can blind us to flaws in those we care about." "I don't know if I still do," she whispered. "Love him, I mean. I'm not sure I even know who he really is anymore." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You don't have to decide anything right now. Just focus on taking care of yourself and the baby." After dinner, as Claire was preparing to leave, she hesitated at the door. "Maybe I should move back home. I miss being here. And Megan's place is so small." "I would love that," I said, trying not to sound too eager. "Your room is exactly as you left it," she smiled. "I'll think about it. Good night, Mom." As I watched her drive away, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this rift between us was healing. Perhaps Drew's schemes would backfire, bringing Claire and me closer instead of driving us apart. That hope was short-lived. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my phone ringing. It was Mrs. Abernathy from next door, her voice pitched high. With concern, "Maggie, there are 2 police officers at your front door. Is everything all right?" I scrambled out of bed and peered through the window. Sure enough, a police cruiser was parked in my driveway, and 2 officers stood on my porch. "I don't know, Betty. I'd better go see what they want. Heart pounding. I threw on a robe and hurried downstairs. What could the police possibly want with me at 7:30 in the morning? I opened the door to find a male and female officer, both wearing polite but serious expressions. Mrs. Wilson, I'm Officer Ramirez and this is Officer Chen. May we come in? Of course, I said, stepping aside. What's this about? They followed me into the living room but remained standing. We received a wellness check request, Officer Ramirez explained. Someone called concerned about your safety and well-being. My safety? I repeated incredulously. I'm perfectly fine, as you can see. The caller expressed concern that you've been experiencing confusion and memory issues, possibly putting yourself at risk. They mentioned finding the stove left on, medications not taken properly. I felt a surge of indignation. That's absolutely false. I don't have any cognitive issues, and I certainly don't leave the stove on or mismanage my medications. Who made this report? The officers exchanged glances. I'm afraid we can't disclose that information, Officer Chen said, but they identified themselves as a family member. Drew. Again. Officers, I believe I know who made this call, and it's part of an ongoing attempt to discredit me. My son-in-law is trying to gain control of my assets, specifically this house. He's already called my volunteer position, making similar false claims. They looked skeptical but not dismissive. Do you have any documentation regarding your cognitive health? Officer Ramirez asked. I have an appointment with my doctor tomorrow for a full cognitive assessment. I saw the same doctor 2 months ago for a physical and no concerns were raised. And you live alone? Officer Chen asked, glancing around. Yes, though my daughter may be moving back in soon. She's currently staying with a friend. The officers completed their wellness check, asking me basic orientation questions, the date, who is president, my address, and observing my living conditions, which were immaculate. They seemed satisfied that I was in no danger. Everything appears to be in order, Mrs. Wilson, Officer Ramirez concluded. But if you're concerned about someone making false reports, you might want to consider filing a report of your own. Thank you. I'll discuss it with my attorney. After they left, I called Patricia immediately, furious. He called the police for a wellness check, claimed I was leaving the stove on, mismanaging medications, complete fabrications. This is escalating. Quickly, Patricia said, her voice tight with concern. He's building a paper trail, Maggie. Police reports, calls to your workplace. He's creating a narrative of cognitive decline. What's his endgame? Even if he convinced people I'm confused, he couldn't just take my house. Not directly, Patricia agreed. But if he could have you declared incompetent, and if Claire were appointed as your guardian, believing his lies about your mental state, he could potentially influence financial decisions through her. Claire would never go along with this. I insisted. Are you certain? If Drew presented enough evidence of your decline, framed it as concern for your well-being rather than a grab for your assets, people can be manipulated, especially by those they trust. The thought was unbearable. What should I do? Document everything, get that cognitive assessment, and consider filing for a restraining order. Drew's actions are now bordering on harassment. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen, trying to process the escalating situation. Drew was systematically attempting to undermine my credibility, to paint me as an elderly woman losing her grip on reality. It was insidious, calculated, and frankly terrifying. My phone rang again. Claire. Mom? Drew just called me. He said the police had to check on you this morning because you were found wandering the neighborhood confused, trying to get into other people's houses. He said you didn't even recognize the officers. My blood ran cold. Not only had Drew called in a false wellness check, but he was now lying about what had happened. That's completely untrue, I said firmly. Yes, the police came, but it was because someone, presumably Drew, called in a false report claiming I was having memory issues. I was home in bed when they arrived. They asked me some basic questions, looked around, and left satisfied that I was perfectly fine. Claire was silent for a moment. "He lied to me," she said finally, her voice small. "He deliberately lied about something so serious." "Yes, he did. Why would he do this? What could he possibly gain by making people think you're losing your mind?" "Control," I said simply. "If enough people believe I'm cognitively impaired, he could try to gain legal control over my finances, my house, through you." Another long silence. "I'm coming over," Claire said abruptly. "I need to see you, and I need to get my things from Megan's. I'm moving back home." Relief washed over me. "I'll be here." 2 hours later, Claire arrived with several suitcases. As I helped her carry them upstairs to her old room, she broke down, sobbing against my shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I had no idea Drew would go this far, that he could be so calculating." I held her close, struck by how our roles had reversed. Now I was the one comforting her, protecting her. "It's not your fault. You couldn't have known." Once Claire was settled, we sat at the kitchen table making a plan. She would contact Drew, arrange to meet him in a public place, and confront him about his actions. I was hesitant. Drew had shown how manipulative he could be. But Claire was determined. "I need to look him in the eye when I ask him about these lies," she insisted. "I need to see his face when he tries to deny it." I couldn't argue with her resolve. "Just be careful, and call me immediately afterward." What neither of us anticipated was what Drew would do next, an act so brazen, so vindictive, that it would change everything. Claire arranged to meet Drew at a coffee shop downtown the following afternoon. I spent the morning at my doctor's appointment, undergoing a thorough cognitive assessment. Dr. Reynolds was baffled by my concerns until I explained the situation. "Margaret, I've been your physician for 15 years, she said, reviewing my test results. "I can state unequivocally that you show absolutely no signs of cognitive impairment. Your memory, judgment, and problem-solving abilities are all exceptional for a woman of any age." "I need that in writing," I said. "Officially, on your letterhead." Dr. Reynolds raised an eyebrow but complied, drafting a detailed letter attesting to my mental acuity and overall health. As she handed it to me, she added, "This son-in-law of yours sounds like trouble. Be careful." I was back home by noon, anxiously, awaiting Claire's return from her confrontation with Drew. When 3 p.m. came and went with no word from her, I began to worry. By 4:30, I was on the verge of calling the police when my phone finally rang. "Claire, are you all right? What happened?" Her voice was tight, controlled. "I'm fine. Can you unlock the front door? I'll be home in about 20 minutes. "Of course. Did you meet with Drew?" "Yes." Her tone left no room for further questions. "I'll explain everything when I get there." True to her word, Claire arrived exactly 20 minutes later, but she wasn't alone. A burly man in workman's coveralls followed her to the front door. "Mom, this is Tony from Secure Solutions," she said, her expression grim. "We need to change all the locks, immediately." "What happened?" I asked, alarmed by the urgency in her voice. Claire waited until we were inside with the door closed before answering. "Drew didn't show up at the coffee shop. After 30 minutes I called him, but he didn't answer. So I decided to go by our old house to see if he might be there." She paused, taking a shaky breath. The front door was wide open. Inside was a disaster. Drawers emptied, furniture overturned. At first I thought we'd been robbed, but then I realized something strange. Only my personal items were disturbed. My jewelry box was emptied, my documents scattered, but Drew's expensive watch collection was untouched. "He staged a break-in?" I asked incredulously. Claire nodded. "I think so. And it gets worse. My set of keys to this house is missing from my keyring." I always kept them in my desk drawer. It's empty now. Ice ran through my veins. Drew had a key. To my house. To our house. I called the police from our old place, Claire continued. Filed a report about the break-in. Emphasized that my keys were taken. But we can't wait for them to find Drew. We need to secure this house now. Tony, who had been patiently waiting, spoke up. I can replace all your exterior locks within the hour. I also recommend a security system. Given the circumstances, I can have a basic setup installed by tomorrow. Do it, I said without hesitation. Whatever it costs. While Tony worked on the locks, Claire and I methodically checked the house to ensure nothing was missing or disturbed. Everything appeared normal, suggesting Drew hadn't used the stolen keys yet. I still can't believe he'd go this far, Claire said, sinking onto the sofa. Breaking into our own house, staging a robbery, it's unhinged. Fear and desperation make people do extreme things, I said, thinking of Patricia's warnings. Drew sees his financial salvation slipping away. In his mind, this house is the solution to all his problems. It's just a house, Claire said softly. To us, yes. To Drew, it's a cash cow. And he's willing to do whatever it takes to get his hands on it. After Tony finished installing the new locks and left, promising to return the next day with the security system equipment, Claire and I sat at the kitchen table strategizing. We need to assume Drew will escalate, I said, channeling Patricia's pragmatic approach. He's shown he's willing to break the law. What's next? Breaking into the house? Confronting us directly? Claire placed a protective hand over her growing belly. You think he might become violent? I don't know, I admitted. I never would have thought he'd stage a break-in either. We need to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. We created a list of immediate actions. Install the security system. Inform the neighbors to be on alert for suspicious activity. Contact Patricia about a restraining order. And ensure all important documents were secure. Claire also decided to call Drew's workplace to verify his employment status, suspecting he might have been less than truthful about that as well. There's one more thing we should do, I said, after we'd worked through our list. Find out exactly how bad Drew's financial situation really is. Claire looked uncomfortable. How? I don't have access to most of his accounts. No, but Patricia might know someone who can help us, legally, to understand what we're dealing with. The more information we have, the better prepared we'll be. The next morning, Patricia arranged for us to meet with a forensic accountant named Victor Ramirez. His office was small but immaculate, with credentials displayed prominently on the walls. Based on what Patricia has told me, Victor said after introductions, your son-in-law has created a significant financial mess. With your permission, Mrs. Thompson, he nodded to Claire, I'd like to run a comprehensive financial background check. This will show us any outstanding debts, loans, liens, or judgments against him or your shared assets. Claire hesitated only, briefly before nodding. Do whatever you need to do. I want to know everything. While Victor began his investigation, Claire received a call from Drew's workplace. She stepped out to take it, returning moments later with a stunned expression. Drew hasn't worked there for 3 months, she said, voice hollow. He was fired for attempting to misappropriate client funds. They were planning to press charges, but Drew returned the money, and they agreed to keep it quiet if he resigned immediately. This revelation hit Claire hard. For months, Drew had been pretending to go to work each day, maintaining the fiction that he was still employed, still earning a salary. Where had he been going instead? And where had the money come from to keep up appearances? Victor's findings, delivered later that afternoon, painted an even grimmer picture. Drew had maxed out multiple credit cards in his name, taken a second mortgage on their house without Claire's knowledge, using forged signatures, and had several high-interest payday loans outstanding. Most disturbing of all, he had recently applied for a loan using my address as collateral, An application that was denied only because the lender discovered the property wasn't in his name. He's completely underwater, Victor concluded. Based on my analysis, he owes approximately $387,000 across various creditors, with minimum monthly payments totaling nearly $9,000. Without a steady income, he'll default within weeks if he hasn't already. Claire looked shell-shocked. How could I not have known any of this? Financial abusers are experts at compartmentalizing, Victor explained gently. They create separate accounts, intercept mail, forge documents, whatever it takes to maintain control and secrecy. What happens now? I asked. To Claire, I mean. Is she liable for these debts? Some of them. Unfortunately, yes. The second mortgage on your home, Mrs. Thompson, will need to be addressed. The credit card debt is solely in Mr. Thompson's name, but the payday loans may be complicated depending on how he applied for them. Claire squared her shoulders, a gesture so reminiscent of her father that it made my heart ache. I'll deal with whatever's legally mine. I won't run from my responsibilities. But first, we need to make sure Drew can't create any more damage. Victor nodded approvingly. That's the right approach. I can help you set up credit monitoring and fraud alerts to prevent any new accounts being opened in your name. Armed with this information, we returned to Patricia's office to discuss next steps. The restraining order was already in process, but Patricia suggested additional measures. Given the severity of the financial deception and the staged break-in, I think we should file a police report specifically naming Drew as the perpetrator, she advised. We should also notify your bank, your credit card companies, and any other financial institutions that Drew is not authorized to access your accounts or information, Margaret. What about the house? I asked. Can he still try to claim an interest? In it somehow. The deed is clearly in your name now, Patricia reassured me. But to be extra cautious, I've prepared a document for Claire to sign, explicitly acknowledging that she makes no claim to the property and recognizes it as your sole asset. Claire signed without hesitation. I've never wanted your house, Mom. I just want you to be safe and happy. As we left Patricia's office, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. We had a plan. We were taking control back from Drew, protecting ourselves legally and financially. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt cautiously optimistic. That optimism lasted exactly 6 hours. We returned home to find a locksmith's van parked in my driveway. A man was working on my front door while Drew stood supervising, arms crossed over his chest. "What are you doing?" Claire demanded as we hurried up the walkway. "Get away from our house." Drew turned, his expression cold. "Your house? That's interesting, considering your mother has been declared mentally incompetent and placed under emergency guardianship. As her closest male relative by marriage, I've been named her temporary guardian." He held up an official-looking document. "Court order, signed this afternoon. I'm changing the locks for Maggie's own safety. She's been forgetting to lock up at night, leaving the stove on. It's not safe for her to live alone anymore." I snatched the paper from his hand, Claire reading over my shoulder. It was indeed a court order, but as I scanned the text, my blood ran cold. The petitioner wasn't Drew. It was my sister, Eleanor, who lived in Arizona. Eleanor, whom I hadn't spoken to in over a decade due to a family rift. Eleanor, who couldn't possibly know anything about my current mental state. "This is fraudulent," I said firmly. "My sister didn't file this petition. She lives across the country and we haven't spoken in years." Drew's smile was smug. "Check the signature, Maggie. That's Eleanor's handwriting, isn't it? She's very concerned. About you. We've been corresponding for weeks." I stared at the signature. It did look like Eleanor's handwriting, though I hadn't seen it in years. How had Drew found her? How had he convinced her to do this? "Sir, is there a problem here?" the locksmith asked nervously, clearly sensing the tension. "No problem," Drew said smoothly. "Just a confused elderly woman and her daughter who don't understand what's happening. Please continue." "Stop work immediately," I commanded. "This man does not have authority over this house." The locksmith looked between us, uncertain. I need to see some ID from whoever owns this property. I pulled out my driver's license. This is my house, mine alone. This man is my estranged son-in-law, who is trying to take control of my property through fraudulent means. The locksmith stepped back from the door. I'm not getting involved in a family dispute. You folks need to sort this out legally before I can continue. He packed up his tools and left hurriedly. Drew's face contorted with fury. You think you've won? This is just a temporary setback. The court order is real, Maggie. By this time, tomorrow, you'll be removed from this house for your own safety. He jabbed a finger toward Claire. And you'll regret choosing her side. With that, he stormed to his car and drove away, tires squealing on the pavement. Claire and I rushed, inside immediately calling Patricia. When we explained about the court order, she was incredulous. An emergency guardianship requires significant evidence of incapacity, she said. Medical reports, witness testimonies, it's not something granted lightly or quickly. Could it be fake? Claire asked. Possibly, but that would be an extremely serious crime, forging court documents. Send me a photo of the order right away. As Claire took pictures of the document, I couldn't shake the chill that had settled over me. Drew was escalating beyond what I'd imagined possible. If he could produce what appeared to be a legitimate court order, what else might he be capable of? Mom, Claire said quietly after sending the photos, I think we need to call Eleanor. I hadn't spoken to my sister since our mother's funeral. Our relationship had always been complicated, but the final rift occurred when Eleanor accused me of manipulating our mother into leaving me her wedding ring, a family heirloom Eleanor had always coveted. You're right, I agreed reluctantly. We need to know if she's involved in this. The call to Eleanor would set in motion a chain of events that none of us could have anticipated, and reveal just how far Drew had gone to get what he wanted. I hadn't dialed Eleanor's number in years, but I still remembered it. As the phone rang, my throat tightened with anxiety. What if she really had filed for guardianship over me? What if, after all these years of silence, her reappearance in my life was as an accomplice to Drew's schemes? Hello? Eleanor's voice hadn't changed, still sharp, slightly nasal, instantly recognizable. Eleanor, it's Margaret. A pause. Maggie, is that really you? After all this time? Yes, it's me. I'm calling because of the guardianship papers, she interrupted. I had a feeling you might. That nice son-in-law of yours said you probably wouldn't take it well. My heart sank. So she was involved. Eleanor, whatever. Drew told you about me isn't true. I'm not experiencing memory problems or confusion. I've just had a complete cognitive assessment that confirms I'm perfectly fine. That's not what Drew said, Eleanor replied skeptically. He sent me copies of police reports, notes from your doctor, even videos of you getting confused about simple things. He said you were too proud to admit you needed help. Videos? Claire mouthed, looking alarmed. None of that is real, I insisted. Drew is manipulating you. He wants control of my house because he's in serious financial trouble. He's been fired from his job, has massive debts, and sees my property as his way out. Eleanor was silent for a moment. That's hard to believe, Maggie. The documents looked very official. And why would your son-in-law lie about something so serious? Because he's desperate. Eleanor, I can prove everything I'm telling you. My attorney has copies of my recent medical assessment, documentation of Drew's financial situation, even police reports about his behavior. He staged a break-in at his own house yesterday, stole keys to my home, and tried to have the locks changed today, using what appears to be a fraudulent court order with your signature on it. Another long pause. My signature? I never signed anything. Flicker of hope ignited in my chest. You didn't sign a petition for guardianship over me? No. Drew contacted me about a month ago, said he was worried about you, wanted to reconnect our family before it was too late. We've exchanged some emails and he's called a few times, but I never signed any legal documents. Relief washed over me. He forged your signature, Eleanor. He's created a fraudulent court order claiming I've been placed under emergency guardianship with him as my guardian. That's a crime, Eleanor said, sounding genuinely shocked. Yes, it is. A serious one. What can I do to help? She asked, surprising me. Despite our differences, it seemed Eleanor wasn't willing to be used as a pawn in Drew's schemes. We need a statement from you confirming you never filed for guardianship. My attorney can draft something and email it to you right away. I'll sign it immediately, Eleanor promised. And Maggie, I'm sorry about everything. Maybe when this is all sorted out, we could talk? Really talk? The olive branch was unexpected, but not unwelcome. I'd like that. After hanging up, I relayed the conversation to Claire and Patricia, who had remained on speakerphone throughout. This is extremely serious, Patricia said gravely. Creating fraudulent court documents is a felony. We need to contact the police immediately, and I'll reach out to Judge Harmon, who handles guardianship cases. She needs to know someone is circulating fake orders with her signature. Within the hour, 2 detectives were seated in my living room, examining the fraudulent court order and taking our statements. They looked grim as we explained the escalating pattern of Drew's behavior. This isn't a simple family dispute anymore, Detective Wilson said, carefully placing the document in an evidence bag. Identity theft, forgery of official documents, filing false police reports. These are serious offenses with potential prison time. Do you think there's enough evidence to arrest him? Claire asked, her hand protectively covering her belly. We'll need to investigate further, but based on what you've told us in this document, we have grounds to bring him in for questioning at minimum. Detective Wilson replied. Do you have any idea where he might be now? We didn't, but I suggested checking with his friend Marcus, whose address Claire fortunately knew. The detectives left with promises to keep us updated, advising us to call immediately if Drew returned to the house. After they departed, Claire collapsed onto the sofa, exhaustion etched across her face. I can't believe this is happening. How did things spiral so far out of control? I sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. I don't know, sweetheart, but we're handling it together. She leaned against me, a gesture reminiscent of her childhood. When did our roles reverse, Mom? When did I become the one needing protection, and you the protector? That's how family works, I said softly. Sometimes you're the strong one, sometimes I am. We take turns carrying each other. Claire smiled weakly. Dad would be proud of you, standing your ground, not letting Drew intimidate you. He'd be proud of you too, I assured her. It takes courage to face the truth about someone you love. Spent the evening in a strange limbo, jumping at every sound, waiting for news from the detectives. The security technicians arrived as promised to install the new system, adding another layer of protection to our home. By nightfall, we had motion sensors, window alarms, and cameras covering every entry point. As we prepared for bed, Claire hesitated at the foot of the stairs. Would it be okay if I slept in your room tonight? I'd feel safer. My heart swelled with tenderness. Of course. Like when you were little and there were thunderstorms. She smiled at the memory. You'd let me crawl into your bed, and you'd tell me stories until I fell asleep. I remember. You always wanted the one about the princess who saved herself. And that was the best kind of princess, Claire said, her smile warming slightly. We settled into my room, Claire in the bed while I took the comfortable reading chair nearby. Neither of us expected to sleep much, but eventually exhaustion claimed her, her breathing deepening as she drifted off. I watched over her, this child of mine who was about to become a mother herself, and felt a fierce protectiveness that transcended my own safety concerns. Whatever happened next, I would shield Claire and her baby from harm, even if that meant facing Drew's wrath directly. Around 2 a.m., my phone rang, startling me from a light doze. It was Detective Wilson. Mrs. Wilson, I wanted to update you personally. We located Drew Thompson at his friend's apartment and brought him in for questioning regarding the fraudulent court order. Has he been arrested? I asked, moving into the hallway to avoid waking Claire. Yes. Initially, he denied everything, claimed the court order was legitimate. But when we confronted him with your sister's statement refuting any involvement, he became combative. During the interrogation, we discovered additional forged documents in his possession, including what appear to be fake power of attorney papers with your signature. I felt sick. He was planning to take control of all my finances. It seems so. Mrs. Wilson, given the evidence and the escalating nature of his actions, the district attorney has authorized charges of forgery, attempted fraud, filing false police reports, and criminal impersonation. He's being held without bail pending arraignment. Relief flooded through me. Drew was in custody. We were safe, at least for now. Thank you, Detective. Does Claire know? Not yet. We thought you might want to tell her yourself. After hanging up, I returned to the bedroom, finding Claire awake and sitting up anxiously. Who was that? She asked, fear evident in her voice. Detective Wilson. They've arrested Drew. Claire's expression cycled through shock, disbelief, and finally, a complex mixture of relief and grief. What happens now? He'll be arraigned, formal charges will be filed. Patricia will guide us through next steps. I sat beside her on the bed. How are you feeling? She took a shuddering breath. Honestly, relieved, and then guilty for feeling relieved. He's my husband, the father of my child, and part of me still cares about him. But another part is just grateful that the chaos might finally stop. Those feelings are all valid, I assured her. This isn't going to be a simple process, emotionally or legally. I know, she whispered, but for the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe. The next morning brought a flurry of activity. Patricia arrived early to review the case details and help us prepare for what was to come. Drew's arraignment was scheduled for that afternoon, and while neither Claire nor I was required to attend, Claire insisted on being there. I need to see him, she said firmly. I need him to know that I'm not hiding, that I know exactly what he's done. Patricia arranged for a victim's advocate to accompany us to court. As we walked into the courtroom, I felt Claire's grip on my arm tighten. Drew was already there, wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him. He looked diminished somehow, his usual confidence replaced by a haunted, desperate expression. When he spotted us entering, his face twisted with anger. He leaned toward his public defender, whispering furiously, eyes never leaving us. The attorney placed a restraining hand on his arm, murmuring something that made Drew sit back, jaw clenched. The proceedings were brief but impactful. Drew was formally charged with multiple felonies, his bail set at $500,000, an amount he had no hope of posting given his financial situation. When the judge asked how he pled, Drew's voice was barely audible as he muttered, "Not guilty." The case was scheduled for a preliminary hearing in 2 weeks, and Drew was led away, not once looking back in our direction. Outside the courthouse, Claire released a breath she seemed to have been holding throughout the proceedings. He didn't even look at me at the end, like I wasn't worth acknowledging anymore. He's humiliated, Patricia explained. Men like Drew operate on pride and control. He's lost both. What happens to him now? I asked. He'll remain in custody until the preliminary hearing, unless someone posts his bail, which seems unlikely. At the hearing, the prosecution will present enough evidence to convince the judge there's probable cause to proceed to trial. Given the documentation we have, I expect they'll succeed. And then? Then his attorney will likely seek a plea deal. The evidence is substantial, and trials are expensive and risky. A plea would mean reduced charges in exchange for a guilty plea. Will he go to prison? Claire asked, her voice small. Probably, Patricia said gently. The forgery of court documents alone carries a potential sentence of 2 to 5 years. Add in the other charges, and he's facing significant time. Claire nodded, absorbing this reality. I need to file for divorce as soon as possible. I can refer you to an excellent family law attorney, Patricia offered. Given the circumstances, we should be able to expedite the process somewhat. As we drove home, I watched Claire staring out the window, her expression resolute despite the tears silently tracking down her cheeks. In that moment, I saw not just my daughter, but a woman coming into her full strength, forced by circumstances to grow beyond what she thought herself capable of. You're going to be okay, I said softly. We both are. She turned to me with a sad smile. I know, it just doesn't feel that way yet. Growth rarely feels good while it's happening, I replied. It's only looking back that we recognize how far we've come. Back at home, we found an unexpected visitor waiting on the porch, Eleanor. She stood awkwardly, clutching her purse, looking exactly as I remembered her except for the silver now threading through her once dark hair. I caught the first flight I could, she explained as I stopped in surprise. After what happened with Drew using my name, I wanted to help in person, and maybe start fixing things between us. For a moment, I was speechless. Then, to my own surprise, I stepped forward and embraced my sister for the first time in over a decade. Come inside, I said. We have a lot to talk about. As Eleanor, Claire, and I settled in the living room, I felt a strange sense of completion, as if pieces long scattered were finally coming back together. Drew's malicious actions had inadvertently created an opportunity for healing, for growth, for recognition of what truly mattered. Sometimes, it takes a crisis to show us our own strength and the true value of the connections we thought lost. The weeks following Drew's arrest were a whirlwind of legal meetings, paperwork, and emotional processing. Claire filed for divorce with the family law attorney Patricia recommended, citing fraud and criminal behavior as grounds. Given Drew's incarceration and the overwhelming evidence against him, the proceedings moved forward with surprising efficiency. Eleanor stayed with us for 2 weeks, a visit that began awkwardly but gradually transformed into something healing for both of us. Late one night, over cups of chamomile tea, we finally addressed the decade-old rift between us. I was wrong about Mom's ring, Eleanor admitted, twisting her napkin. After all these years, I can finally admit that. She always intended for you to have it. Why did you fight me so hard on it? I asked, genuinely curious after all this time. Eleanor sighed, her shoulders slumping. It wasn't really about the ring. It was about feeling like Mom always preferred you, the responsible one, the steady one. I was the wild child, the disappointment. When she left you the ring, it felt like one final confirmation that you were her favorite. She loved us both, I said gently. Differently, perhaps, but equally. I know that now. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. It took losing touch with you to realize what really mattered. Not a piece of jewelry, but my only sister. By the time Eleanor returned to Arizona, we had established a fragile but genuine reconnection. She promised to return for the babies. Birth, a commitment that would have seemed impossible just weeks earlier. Claire's divorce proceeded expeditiously. Drew, facing multiple felony charges and unable to afford bail, had little leverage to contest anything. He signed the divorce papers from jail, demanding nothing except that his name be included on the baby's birth certificate. Claire, despite everything, agreed to this one concession. The baby deserves to know where they came from, she explained when I questioned her decision. Even if Drew isn't part of their life, they should know their full history. I admired her maturity and compassion, even toward a man who had caused us so much pain. 3 months after Drew's arrest, his case concluded with a plea bargain. He admitted guilt to forgery of legal documents, attempted fraud, and filing false police reports in exchange for a reduced sentence of 2 years in prison, followed by 3 years of probation. He was also ordered to pay restitution and complete financial counseling and anger management programs. Claire attended the sentencing hearing, now visibly pregnant at 7 months. When given the opportunity to make a victim impact statement, she approached the podium with dignity that brought tears to my eyes. "Your Honor, the man before you today is the father of my unborn child," she began, her voice steady despite the emotion visible in her eyes. "His actions have caused immeasurable pain and disruption to our lives. He betrayed my trust, manipulated my mother, and attempted to steal what wasn't his to take." She paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "But I'm not here to request additional punishment. I'm here to say that despite everything, I hope Drew uses his time in prison to reflect and become a better person. Not for my sake. That bridge is irreparably burned. But for our child, who deserves to know their father as something better than a desperate man who valued money over family." Drew stared at the table throughout her statement, never once looking up. When the judge asked if he wished to speak before sentencing, he simply mumbled, "No, Your Honor," and was led away in handcuffs. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered, somehow catching wind of the unusual case involving fraudulent guardianship documents and attempted property theft. As Claire and I tried to make our way to the car, they surrounded us, shouting questions. "Mrs. Wilson, how do you feel about your son-in-law's sentence? Mrs. Thompson, will you allow your child to have a relationship with their father? Is it true that Drew Thompson tried to have you declared incompetent, Mrs. Wilson?" I was prepared to push past them without comment, but Claire stopped, squared her shoulders, and addressed the cameras directly. "My mother is one of the strongest, most competent women I know," she said clearly. "What happened to us is not just a family drama. It's a warning about how vulnerable even independent, intelligent older adults can be to financial manipulation and elder abuse. If sharing our story helps even one family recognize the warning signs, then some good will have come from our ordeal." Her impromptu statement resonated far beyond what we could have imagined. By evening, local news stations were running the story. By the next day, it had been picked up by several national outlets. Claire's words about elder financial abuse struck a chord, particularly her emphasis on how it can happen even to seemingly invulnerable seniors, Patricia called, sounding impressed. "Your case is raising important awareness. Several elder law advocacy groups have reached out to me, asking if you'd be willing to share your experience more formally. They're organizing a conference on elder financial abuse prevention next month." I was hesitant. Public speaking had never been my forte, but Claire encouraged me. "Mom, think about it. If Drew could do this to you, an educated, financially stable woman with supportive family, imagine how many vulnerable seniors without those advantages are being exploited right now. Put that way, how could I refuse?" 1 month later, I found myself at a podium before an audience of legal professionals, social workers, and elder advocates, sharing the details of Drew's escalating attempts to gain control of my home. I spoke of the red flags we'd missed initially, the tactics he'd employed, and the resources that had ultimately helped us fight back. "The most insidious aspect of elder financial abuse," I concluded, "is how it disguises itself as concern. You're getting confused, Mom. Let me handle that for you, Grandma. You shouldn't live alone anymore." These phrases, coming from someone you love and trust, don't sound alarming. They sound caring. That's what makes this form of abuse so devastating and so difficult to identify, even for the victim. The response was overwhelming. More speaking engagements followed. I connected with other seniors who had experienced similar manipulation, many without the happy ending our story had. With Patricia's help, I established a small foundation dedicated to providing legal resources to seniors facing financial exploitation, using a portion of my retirement savings to fund its initial operations. Claire gave birth to a beautiful baby girl in early summer, Hannah Margaret Thompson, named for both her grandmothers. The moment I held my granddaughter, I felt a circle completing. Here was the next generation, born amid turmoil but entering a family newly strengthened by adversity. As Hannah grew from newborn to infant, Claire blossomed as a mother. She completed her maternity leave and returned to her job as an architectural designer, while I cared for Hannah during working hours, an arrangement that brought joy to us both. Our home, once feeling too empty, now resonated with the sounds of life. Drew served his sentence without incident. He wrote to Claire occasionally, asking about Hannah, expressing what seemed like genuine remorse. Claire responded with brief updates and photos, maintaining a boundary that was neither vindictive nor overly familiar. Whether he would ever have a relationship with his daughter remained an open question, one that only time would answer. 6 months after Hannah's birth, Claire and I were sorting through baby clothes she'd outgrown when my daughter suddenly looked up at me. "I've been thinking," she said, folding a tiny onesie, "about what happens when Hannah starts school and I'm working full-time. This house is in a great school district, and there's plenty of room for us both. What would you think about making this arrangement permanent? Not just living together temporarily, but actually planning our future as a multi-generational household." The suggestion surprised me, though perhaps it shouldn't have. "You don't think you'll want your own place eventually? Your own independence?" Claire smiled. "Mom, if the past year has taught me anything, it's that independence isn't about living separately. It's about making choices that honor your own needs while respecting those you love. I choose this. Us. Together. Supporting each other. If that's what you want, too." I thought about the journey we'd been on. How Drew's greed had nearly torn us apart, but ultimately brought us closer than ever. How his attempt to control me had ironically led to my finding a new purpose in helping other seniors maintain their autonomy. "I'd like that very much," I said, reaching for my daughter's hand. "This has always been a home meant for family." That evening, as Claire bathed Hannah and I prepared dinner, I caught sight of us reflected in the kitchen window. Grandmother, mother, child. 3 generations of women, each in different phases of life but bound together by love and shared experience. The house that Drew had so desperately wanted to take from me had transformed from a repository of memories into a place of new beginnings. The son-in-law who had tried to make me sleep in the garage had inadvertently given me the greatest gift: a second chance at family, at purpose, at joy. Sometimes life's cruelest moments lead to unexpected blessings. Sometimes those who seek to diminish us instead reveal our true strength. And sometimes the deed to a house is not just a legal document, but a symbol of something far more valuable: the power to choose our own path, to define family on our own terms, and to turn even the darkest chapters into stories of resilience and triumph. Music swells to a hopeful conclusion. As for Drew, the last I heard, he was nearing the end of his sentence, enrolled in financial management classes, and writing letters of apology to everyone he had harmed. Whether redemption awaited him, I couldn't say. But I knew this: the house he had coveted, the property he had schemed to control, it would never be his. It belonged to the women who had defended it, who had earned it, who had transformed it from a simple structure into a true home. In the end, that was the greatest vindication of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.